Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for the cooler weather. Please be with each of us tonight as we move through tonight's agenda and give us wisdom as we move through tonight's city business. In Christ's name we pray.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Janine, is there any citizen comment?
Yes, sir. The only one requested is Renee Dempsey.
Renee, if you could approach the podium, give your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
My name is Renee Dempsey, and I live at 114 East 19th Street. And I have some concerns. 3 of them. One of them is, why did the city purchase 4 acres for $20,000 from the Methodist Church to build the Aquatic Center when we could have used the property at the Crescent Park? It's big enough, great access, kids can walk there. The other one is, why hasn't our water bill gone down now that the revenue is coming in from the dairy plant? The other one is, why did the city put the cart before the horse and buy 275 acres for $275,000 to build a runway for a private citizen's jet? And don't tell me that's not what it's for, because I asked the owner, and that's what they told me it was for. So, I've given y'all all a sheet so that you can answer these questions for me. And if you'll just put your name on them so I'll know who answered the questions.
You don't need to answer any questions, public comments or comments that council and staff are not able to provide any answers at this time.
It's not on the agenda, so therefore we can't discuss it.
I'm just saying for your own personal self.
Thank you. Janine, is there?
I signed that deal, got my registered.
You can.
Okay. Charles Heffington, I live at 200 East 26th Street. My concern is minute. We talked about this disannexation. I can't say it. But anyway.
Disannexation?
Yeah. And I know west of the prison, that street, them houses aren't taxed for the city. I've got a farm right west of there that I'm paying city taxes on. It's 10 or 11 acres on the east side. I don't know what for, but, you know, I'm way west of them. I don't know if it's because it's on the highway or I don't know what kind of rules are on annexation, but, and like I say, it's just that, but then as we was talking about this, I said, well, I'm gonna bring mine up. So anyway, it's just 10, 11 acres, and, but I don't have any city services or nothing there. It's I just wanted to talk. I hadn't got up here all year.
Can I say, can you get up and speak during the public session? Can you speak during the public hearing about that, since it's a question of that?
Sure.
Okay. That would probably be a good time to get up and speak, so we can actually.
Like I said, it's a minute thing. It's not that much tax, but all this other coming up, we're gonna de-annex, they, you know, do that too.
We need more information, I guess.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. Anybody else?
No, sir.
This time we'll have an introduction of new city employees. Mitch?
Lance has got one, and Ross may have one coming, we'll see. Jamie Sanchez, if you want to say that. We've been trying to replace several lost employees, so we still have 2 or 3 more positions to fill. And Ross has a new employee.
Yes, sir. Matt Howard has got Pepper with him. He's at the hospital with a dog bite, not our dog bite, but a dog bite. That's kind of ironic, but hopefully he'll be here sometime.
Glad to have y'all. Look forward to working with you. Next, we will consider and approve minutes from the July 25th regular meeting. There are no additions or corrections. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Buddy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Next, we will consider and approve monthly departmental reports, police department, fire department, EMS, code enforcement, animal control, landfill, waterways, water, streets and parks, municipal court, monthly financial reports, sales tax collection, property tax collection reports, LEDC A and B minutes, if yours met. If you have a question, please identify the page.
I don't have any questions, I just want to give a kudos out to the water department. A few weeks ago, we had an issue with the water pump, and I know that Kevin was out of town, and the reason I'm saying this is I got a call from one of the managers out at the dairy facility concerned about the water pressure, and I'm going to tell you, I'm just proud of how the city handled that, how Sarah handled it. Kevin got back to everybody, promptly identified the problem, alleviated a big problem out there, and just want to say kudos to them. And one thing that the manager, maintenance manager out there at the plant said that was really impressed me with the simple fact that in his years out in California when they had problems, people would say that they'd call back and they never did, but he was really impressed with how the city and the lines of communication and stuff, and they called him again and let him know what the problem was and got it fixed, whatever he had to shut down. So I just want to say good job and keep it up.
Any other questions or discussions?
On the police department reports, there's two different reports in there. It says page 1 of 2, but we do not get page 2 of either one. Pages 17 and 18.
I got one.
Yes, sir. 17 and 18.
Is it just the totals on the second page, or?
It's basically calls by type.
Okay.
Do you like to see them?
Yeah.
We have the first version.
We have first.
We have the first version on the second.
17 and 18.
You don't have any?
Yeah, we don't have.
I don't know.
Yeah, both-
Yeah, we both have one and
Yeah.
two.
Okay.
I only get the first page of both.
I don't know what to tell you on that.
So, and we get a full report put in next, full the both pages put in next month's packets.
I'll make sure of it. I'll tell my
Sure, it's
chief.
probably-
It's probably gonna be the totals more than likely.
You think there's anything on the second page?
Sir? No, sir.
Well, that one- you don't have the
17 and
second page
18,
either.
it's got one of 2 on both pages. Probably just your totals.
Any other questions? If none, can I get a motion to approve the monthly departmental reports?
I'll make a motion, we approve the monthly departmental reports.
Second. Motion's been made by Kenny, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve the appointment of the municipal court judge, and she's written a letter on the page. 105. Her appointment's up September the 30th. she's seeking reappointment. Any discussion or?
For new members, this is state law required thing that the council, the municipal judge, lives there for 2 years.
Maximum of
2 years.
The city has always kind of done 2-year terms on it. The state law is 2 to 4. Can be any more than that. So. Any questions for the judge, or can we get a motion to appoint the judge for 2 years?
I'll make a motion to appoint Judge Perkins for the 2 years.
Second. Motion's been made by Ben, seconded by Michael, that we appoint Judge Perkins for another 2-year term. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Chief, I think you're in.
That's my new office. That might be the dog.
You're a little fatter.
Hi, Cooper.
Oh, you think?
No.
Okay, guys, this is Pepper. Okay, the reason she's wound up is that's exactly what the trainers want her to be. She's hyper, she's wound up, but when she alerts on something, she freezes like a rock.
Sit. Sit. Yeah.
Huh?
How long have y'all had her?
We just got her.
This is her
Got her
second
Friday.
shift.
Well, she'll settle down this time,
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
probably. She'll settle
Yeah.
down a
Oh,
lot.
yeah.
Oh, she
Right
will.
now, everything's new.
Yeah.
All the smells are new, all the places are
She
new.
needs decompression time.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
And she gets more comfortable with me and gets more comfortable here.
Right.
But she's very social.
I'll let Matt do all the talking. He's the one that went through the training, and what he was telling me was it was pretty strenuous training.
Oh, yeah.
Stressful for the
Will you do me a
football.
favor?
Huh?
Will you run up? Is your door locked? There's one inside. There's one over my light bar on my driver's side.
So I get to go fetch the tennis ball.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this?
So Pepper is, she's a sit, stay. She's a pit bull mix. She is rescued out of Canada. And as far as that, that's pretty much all we know about her origins and stuff like that. She went to the National Canine Center in Florida, where she was evaluated by the Animal Farm Foundation, SIT, which is a big national organization that works with shelter dogs and rescue dogs and puts them into places that they could be used in service and stuff like that, to prove that, you know, that these shelter dogs are not junk. They don't need to be just thrown away. They're just good dogs in shelters. Sit. So then from there she went to Sector Canine, which is in Dallas.
Where's your paw? Where's your paw?
Just right next to the driver's side door, underneath my light bar. There should be a tennis ball stuck underneath my light bar. Because I'm like, this now. She went to Sector Canine, which is a police dog training program in Midlothian, Texas, where she was trained for detection on narcotics, on methamphetamine, heroin, marijuana, and cocaine. She was then graduated the program. She then went to a department, I want to say in Arizona or Montana or somewhere, I'm not sure. And she just said she had several big busts, including 22 kilos that she found in the spare tire of a car that she likes to walk. Sit. Down. Sit. Where she found 22 kilos. They had some other issues, and the program was ultimately disbanded, so she went back to Sector Canine, where I then went for the 2 weeks of training with her, and she came to us. She's a great dog. She's single purpose, so she's just narcotics detection. She's not a bite dog. She's not you look at her, there's not an aggressive bone in the dog's body. All she wants is
All she wants is her ball right now.
Yeah, she's focused on that ball.
But then that's how you train their drive. That's her toy, and while this is work for us, while this is work for us to go out and get these guys off the street, this is a game for her. All she wants to do is play game. So we can do up, down, sit, sit, good girl, down, stay, stay, here. Good girl, there you go. Get it. Get the ball. Get that ball. Get that ball. Get it. Oh, that's a good girl. That's a good girl, yeah. The foundation donated all of the, come here, out, out, out. See, she's got all that drive to that ball. Out. There it goes. Sit. Sit. Stay. Sit. Stay. Sit. Down. Stay. Animal Farm Foundation donated all the training, everything for her. We got her free of charge. So, and like I said, the reason they do this is so that we can show to these dogs that there's a place for shelter dogs in the world. It's not just euthanasia, and not just shelter dogs, but pit bulls and all these other aggressive. Their big motto is treat dogs as individuals, not as by species. So down, stay. She's been a great dog. She'll calm down as we get her more acclimated to the city. We're excited. She's fun to be around, and everybody seems to be excited to see her.
Got a bunch of likes on her Facebook page regarding Pepper being here, so.
Yeah. And she squeaks all the time. And that's good. What that is that's her being excited. She wants the ball. So this is how I want her when she's talking to me like that. That means that she's ready to go and she's focused on searching and everything like that. So.
She may need her own radio.
Yeah.
She's got her own badge.
She does have a badge. I've got a badge ordered for her. So she'll have a badge on. Yeah.
We were gonna swear her in, but we thought better of it.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool, really, truly.
If you want to see how she alerts during her training and all that, that's on her Facebook page.
Heel. She should stay with me. Heel. Yeah, good girl. That's a good girl. Go this way.
3 weeks, she'll be like a different dog.
Yeah, but when she alerts, she's like a rock.
Yeah. I saw her while ago when she was focusing on him.
For anyone that's interested, we're going to do a demonstration with her for the kindergartners on September 12th. So you can come and watch her. By that point in time, I should have my boxes, and we'll hide some scents, and I'll actually send her to find them. And as soon as I get it all in, I'm more than welcome to bring them back over here and set the boxes up and let you guys watch over the boxes too. So. And she knows her business, and then we'll get her in a position where she can find it.
How many stops did you do last night?
I had 3 stops last night, and it was just, we were trying. There was nothing moving on the weather last night. But that's where we're headed right now. And she's a high drive dog. The trainer, the canine, or second canine told me, she's a high drive dog. She wants to work. And you'll see it. She came in here. All she wants to do is go in and step around. She wants to work. So we're going to get her out and we're going to work her.
Pepper is vehicle certified, building certified, and package certified, so.
So we're going to be out and about. You guys will see us. Before I was here, I was over at open house, and we had the back of the Tahoe open, and all the kids got to come and see her in the kennel and everything like that.
I told him you were at the hospital tending to a dog bite.
Yeah, not
Got
her.
some raised eyebrows over here.
How old is she?
She is somewhere between 3 and 4, and that's about all that we can, about all we know. Like I said, these dogs are taken out of bad environments.
Sure.
And then they're evaluated for aggressiveness, and they're evaluated for the drive to do this kind of stuff. One of the dogs that was in my training program is actually feral when they found her. So she started out as a wild dog, and 2 days ago she hit her first load of narcotics, so. No. If you see something up, she's super social, she's super playful. She's not like, you know, all these big scary canines that you see on TV. You guys
Not
want
like Lucifer.
yeah. If you guys want to come up and pet her, she's more than happy and willing and glad to do it.
What you guys might notice also is Matt is dressed in kind of a relaxed uniform, that being because if he was in a regular uniform, he'd be covered in dog hair right off.
Oh, yeah.
And he already probably is, so.
We're gonna get out and,
We crashed your party.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
well, I'm sorry I'm being late. We'll get out of here. Come on.
Thanks,
You'll have a great
Dave.
night. Come on. See, she's got a ball now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
she's
plays.
beautiful.
She's content to go just wherever I want her.
Wherever she
That
is.
is hilarious.
This time, we'll consider and approve a vote for the 2019 Board of Trustees for the TML Health Benefits Pool Members, Region 3. This is on page 107, Mitch.
I really don't have a recommendation. I don't know either one of these folks, but I thought maybe some of y'all might know, just from meetings or something, one or the other.
I do know David Riley from the city of Idaho. He's in our area, well, both of them are in our area, but he'd be here for the appointment. I'll make a motion we appoint David Riley. We vote for David Riley.
Second.
Motion's been made by Eric, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve authorization of the city manager and treasurer to act on letters of credits, loans, and deposit accounts. Mitch?
This is a requirement from CCQ that we have this letter of credit. Someday, you know, we might want to just have the balance enough not to have to do this, but for now, this is to keep us in compliance. What it is if something is discovered in the landfill that's hazardous or something like that, this will go to clean up if they do find something. We'll,
Closure, right?
yes, closure fund.
What is the rate, interest rate on this if we did have to use some of this letter of credit?
It's just saying that they would loan us the money. They haven't issued a note on it. It's just the bank saying that they're good for loaning that amount of money if it was required.
Whatever the current interest rate that they have, there's no set rate on it.
Wrong.
Probably just the standard rate, whatever the prime rate is. Well, they're making a bylaw.
Okay.
This has been done for many years, as far as I can remember too, prior to that. Unless the city wants to get a CD, basically, I think the option is to put this money in a CD that would cover the closure of the landfill. You have to either have that or a letter of credit saying you can get the money if needed. Can we get a motion to approve this authorization?
I make a motion to approve the authorization to the city manager and the treasurer to act on letters of credit and loans and deposit accounts.
Second that. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll discuss and consider awarding requests for qualifications for engineers on downtown revitalization project. Mitch?
Mayor, if you'll recall, the city council approved making another application to the downtown revitalization program, DRP, and they've kind of changed up the rules. I understand why they do it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense just to somebody that hadn't been involved with them. But they require you to select your engineer before you apply for the grant, and that's what we've done. We went through the request proposal process, and we received 3 applications. I served on the committee, and Andrew and Kenny Rucker. Something new this year is they required the selection committee to be one elected official. So, Kenny served on that committee, and we went through the applications and scored them, and then added up the scores. And we came up with Parkville, Smith and Cooper as the top scorer, Jacob Martin as the second, and OJD was the third. So, we're not going to be doing an engineering contract right now, but we're required to select an engineer so that if we do get the grant, we can go right into a contract with the selected firm.
So your recommendation is to, well, we appoint Parkville, Smith and Cooper as our,
Yes.
they were the high score.
Yeah, I think you just say motion to select him as our engineer for the DRP program.
Can we give that motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion that we select Parkville Smith and Cooper as our engineering firm. This transfer of it.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Kenny, seconded by Buddy, that we approve Parkville, Smith and Cooper for a DRP project. Is there any further discussion? None? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have a public hearing on Tuesday, August 27, 2019, at 6 p.m. in the City Council chambers to receive comments regarding the proposed disannexation of an area on request of the owner of the property in the City of Littlefield. Ryan, if you give us an explanation.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we've got public hearing today. We also, because the public hearing notice, I have an extra legal description in there, track 1, track 2, and track 3. Track 2 is the actual prison location, and that's what is, with 3 being the road, but 1 is not up for consideration with disannexation. So we're going to still have a public hearing tonight, but we will not consider 13 because we'll do another public hearing at the September meeting that just has just track 2 and track 3, just that doesn't have the additional track that we don't want to disannex. So still welcome to hear any comments on the proposed disannexation of tracks 2 and 3 that were in the actual notice, but we'll do a second public hearing to get any other input too.
This time, I will close this regular city council meeting and open up public hearing. If you have a comment, please approach the podium, give your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Anybody is welcome to speak on this disannexation.
Can you explain what good the city's gonna come get from it?
So the disannexation of that was annexed back in 2001, when the facility, 2000, when the facility was built, and it was 30 acres that they, and the road that they annexed into the city. By de-annexing it, we have 2020 census coming up that currently with that facility in the city limits, Chief, we're the highest sex offender rate in the
Right now, it's
country.
338 people out there that are registered sex offenders, and they're currently going through the registration process right now, the yearly registration process.
So if it's not part of the city, Littlefield as such won't show it, but Lamb County will.
Lamb County will, but the city of Littlefield, when we're doing economic development and showing statistics, and Justin and Jim are putting that stuff together.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, on our demographics, you'll see it affects our crime rate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's multiple-
Yeah, I couldn't connect the dots on it when I was trying to figure out the deal on it, so that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other comments? No comments. I'll close this public hearing and reopen the regular city council meeting. So we're going to
Yeah, so we'll just, no action on 13, and we'll do that again, next month.
Is it possible that we could have executive session with just have consultation with the attorney on that particular item before we go on?
can.
I would really like to request that if possible.
At this point, the city council reserves the right to adjourn into executive session as part of Texas Government Code 551.071, consultation with an attorney. Council and attorney this evening.
Well, for them just to get her Friday, you know,
Yeah, right here.
today. Shoot, I'm surprised she acted as well as she did. Okay, what they're going to do is, as long as that center
Yeah.
shows the
Sweet.
whatever they call it, I don't think they get everything. As long as it shows the affordable bill and everything, when anybody looks at Littleville, our crime statistics are going to be huge. Everything that our department do here, because when it says how many registered.
He's like, you told me.
I'm a witness, I've seen her.
6:50, we have returned from executive session where no action was taken. At this time, we will have a public, At this time, we'll have a public hearing for fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. Mitch, do you want to give a quick overview of that, please?
Sure. Last meeting, you directed me to add $1 per hour for all the dispatchers. And that's really the only change we made since last time we looked at it. Gave us a kind of overall bottom line of $82,000 positive budget, for the proposed budget for 2020.
At this time, we will close the regular city council meeting and open a public hearing to discuss the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. If you have a comment, please approach the podium, give your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Is there anybody that wants to speak? If not, I will close this public hearing and reopen the regular city council meeting. At this time, we will consider and approve an ordinance approving the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2020, and making appropriations for each department, project, account, debt, and declaring an emergency.
I would like to say something that's just come up recently. Actually, it hasn't come up recently. It's something we've been discussing for years, is the police department overtime. And it's always been a problem. Every year it seems to be high. And I think determined exactly what's happened with it. Because the chief doesn't mind getting up and kind of helping me with this a little bit, because I'm not real familiar with how first responders' hours are done, but as I recall, the federal regulations allow for a regular work week for a first responder to be 40, well, in a paper, it'd be 86 hours.
Yes, sir.
So 86 hours for first responders is paid at regular time, right? And then anything over 86 hours is paid at overtime rate, whatever that may be, time and a half, or however that's calculated. So what's happening, I believe, is that what's happening in our city is that anything over 80 hours for the regular week is put in as overtime, even though it's at regular time. And I know this because I saw a timesheet from some individual that showed that they had 6 hours of, I believe it was 6 hours of overtime. Think about this, maybe it was 9 hours of overtime. 6 of those hours were regular pay at the standard, whatever he was making for the first 80 hours. And then like 3 hours were actually the time and a half. So what that's doing is it's causing our overtime amounts to actually be up higher than what they should be. So basically regular hours for most individuals is 2,080 hours per year. First responder hours calculated at regular time should be 2,236 hours per year. So what's happening is our budget is calculated, I believe, where the pay for the first responders hourly is calculated at the 2,080 hours, but not at the 2,236. So when we look at it, an 80-hour work week, that's fine if they only work 80, but typically in a first responder, they're going to work, I think on an average, around 84 hours per work week.
Is that a 80 hours, is that a pay period or week?
80 is
That's
a
a
pay
two-week
period.
pay period. sir.
Okay, so that should be 2 weeks. 2 weeks instead of
A pay period's 2 weeks, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, it's a two-week pay period.
Okay.
So, and I think it's probably just an accounting issue that we've never taken into consideration before. Because when you calculate, Mitch, I don't know how you calculate annual pay, but let me pass these out. This is the proposed salaries for the year. I only have these here. Pass those to me. You get to keep one, just keep one for yourself. So for the police, EMS, but I believe EMS does overtime. Do y'all have overtime? Do y'all work 86 hours in your pay period, or in your?
We do have overtime, but EMS is exempt from the first responder, and they are figured on an 80-hour.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then y'all do anything over 80 is going to be overtime?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's the reason why our police department has always historically had so much overtime, I believe, is that 81 hours is counted, the first hour of 80, over 80 is counted as overtime, and it's really not. It should be calculated as regular time. And our annual pay for these in our budget should actually be calculated at the 2,236 hours per year. Does that make sense? Is that what's happening, Mitch? Is we're doing everybody on the same rate?
No, everybody in the city's figured on an 80-hour work week.
Right, and that's why we have our budgets set up.
And whether it's time and a half or straight time, anything over that 80 hours goes into overtime, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but that's the problem, though. The first responders have a special situation.
We've always set this up as an 80-hour work week for everybody. Now, if we all of a sudden change to an 86-hour work week for everybody, that's going to make a big difference across the board.
But it won't be for everybody. It'll only be for first responders who are.
Why should we treat somebody different?
Because they are treated different by federal standards.
They also work 12-hour shifts versus 8-hour shifts.
It's a federal standard that set that
Well,
86 regular hours per pay period.
Yeah.
for
Well,
them.
it doesn't matter to me, either way y'all want to do it. I mean, basically, y'all tell us how you want to
Well, I believe
account for this, but I'm telling you, that's what we've got there, is we've got 80-hour shifts. And the overtime is something that, last year, if you recall during budget time, we just set that as a number. It doesn't have any historical significance. That 7,500, that was an attempt to just keep overtime to a very, very minimum. And, things happen during the year and we go.
But historically, I mean, for us to make a budget, we need to have something that is not just a number that we throw out there.
Yeah.
That doesn't help us when we create a budget.
Chief, if we went from an 80-hour work week to 84-hour work week for y'all, would that create less overtime, you think?
The 86 hour?
Well,
Yes, sir.
instead of working the 8-hour on the Thursday, working.
I believe that it would help save our overtime issues big time if we went to, 2236?
2236.
I mean, it depends on how you account for it. It's either gonna go in the overtime or in the regular salary.
If you did the 2236, that's based on 86 hours of regular paid payroll. A lot of my officers don't get to 86, but then there's some curve busters that get 16 hours over that. But our problem this year, guys, was the fact that Pedro Cruz blew out a knee in a foot pursuit on July 30th. He was 7 months on workers' comp. He comes back 2 weeks later. J.C. Anstead blows out her knee, roughhousing with her kid. She's out something like 6 months. She's back 2 weeks and then blows out her knee responding to a call at Celebrate Littlefield. And she's currently out of commission right now. There's a lot of things that affect our overtime. We've replaced 3 officers. 1 officer left voluntarily. 2 officers left not so voluntarily. It takes time to train folks. When you train them, you've got an officer riding with the new officer, making sure he knows the geographics and the geographic comprehension of the city. You know, there's all kinds of things that have added to that, 313% over that line item that I have for overtime for this fiscal year.
Well, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to do anything either way, but I mean, this is your budget, y'all tell me how you want it.
Chief, do,
I mean, if you
on
want,
a normal work,
if y'all want me to have, change all the, police department to 86-hour work week, we can change that number up there and to a lot bigger number than 634. But the 12,000 at an 80-hour work week with $634,000, the 12,000 is probably not going to be enough to cover all the overtime.
Well, realistically, though, we've got to have a budget that actually works, because obviously this year we've gone to 30,000 in overtime where we had 7,500.
But one of the things that, when we added that 13th guy, theoretically, we were going to be able to really cut into the overtime.
But then it's also been the calculation of that overtime which is causing the problem in the first place. If we actually take consideration for the actual work week that the police department actually works as regular time.
Like I say, y'all tell me how you want it, and I'll set it up that way.
Chief, do your officers work 80 hours every 2 weeks, or are they scheduled to work 80 more than that?
They're scheduled right now to work 80. They work their 12-hour shifts, and then we have one day where everybody that's on that particular rotation works an 8-hour shift to make it 80.
Yes. So there actually was a problem where the police officers were working 86 hours weeks, but through Chief's predecessor, not while Chief Hester was here, and the problem was addressed. And the decision at the time was to keep the police officers on an 80-hour shift for the 2 weeks. So they don't have an 86-hour shift in which they're routinely breaking it. If they actually come over 80 hours, it is realistically overtime, and there are reasons why this year there was overtime due to injuries and stuff like that. So there wasn't a problem or an accounting issue before, sort of in the way it was addressed, but that was addressed with Chief Garcia. Chief Garcia actually kept the overtime under the budget at that time after that was addressed.
So historically, perspective from this was federal law allows for police officers to be counted at single time to 86 hours.
Yes.
That's allowed. You don't have to pay them time and a half over 80 like we would have to everybody else. It was intended 3 or 4 years ago, there was a salary survey done, this city and other cities this size, that compared salaries for all these positions within the city. The city of Littlefield was on the upper end of pay for just patrol officers. At that time, it was about 38,000, now it's 40,000. And so on an 80-hour work week, that annual salary of 40,000 that you see in your budget is figured on an 80-hour work week. If you allow them to work 86 hours, that adds about another $2,000 to their pay that they now have their realm. They now are given the authority to say, okay, your new work week is 86 hours, so that pay goes from 40,000 to 42,000. The intent was that everybody in the city works an 80-hour pay period, but with flexibility, when you have overtime, it's a good thing for us, is that if they're over 80 hours, we only have to pay them single time. That puts a burden on you to or the police department to stay under that, because if they went over 80, it goes into this overtime budget, and it's reflected upon in your council packet, and then the questions arise, how come you're having to have this? This year there's many justifications for it. But going to an 86-hour work week does not change the budget, it just now goes from overtime into regular pay. But what you have created is you have created the permission to now that all the officers, all 13 of them, can work an 86-hour work week if they choose, if that's the rotation they do. And now, instead of a $40,000 salary that you've allowed, you've now created a $42,000 and change salary. So you've given them a pay raise in essence too. It will help the overtime budget, but it won't help the city budget by moving it to, do you agree with everything I'm saying, Andy?
That's roughly correct, yeah.
And so, it gives the flexibility that we only have to pay them single time if they go over the 80, but the intent was we've added 3 officers. At one point, about 5 or 6 years ago, when the city was in a mess, we were down to about 9 officers, and then every year we've added one, last year being the last year we added the 13th officer. And so that intent was that 13th, 12th and 13th person would be able to flex in and keep everybody at an 80-hour work period, but then with injuries and everything, that hasn't been able to happen.
Chief, what would be the easiest thing for you to do to deal with on this, in this situation?
The easiest thing would be to go forget about the 8-hour day and go about scheduling like that. And guys, the only reason I say that is on our Thursday, which is our 8-hour day. My 2 investigators are out taking calls. They're not investigating their caseload. That's a lost day as far as their job description is concerned. Administrators, me and my lieutenant, we're available for calls too. That takes away from what we're supposed to be doing, but that's fine. I've taken calls left and right for the last 32 years, 6 months, and 23 days. That's fine. I can do that. But what it does, it takes away from what we need to be doing as far as our job descriptions. If it came down to just redoing it, things like that, we could stay to our 80-hour week as long as that 6 hours is regular pay, as long as it came out of the payroll. And the reason I'm suggesting that, guys, is if you allocate that 86 hours for payroll, you'll never get there for that full amount, because there'll be an officer that misses a shift here or there, and somebody in CID will replace them. See what I'm saying? That 12-hour shift will be an eventual shortfall for the city, because you will never get to that total amount.
If they're on paid vacation and somebody has to fill their spot, there will be two people.
Paid vacations, training, sick, any number of things. Comp time. A lot of my guys are taking comp time right now in lieu of getting overtime, but in the long run, that's defeating 2 ways. First of all, they're taking their comp time, and you've got to fill in an officer. You've got to put an officer in that slot. But you can't sit there and tell an officer you can't take comp time versus overtime, or overtime versus comp time.
So Thursday from 7 to 3, we have no patrol officers, right?
Sir?
On Thursday from 7 to 3, we have no regular patrol officers.
No regular patrol officers, just good intentions. Sammy Garcia, he's worth his weight in gold. He takes a ton of calls.
But park working traffic at the schools and stuff like that.
We make a presence there,
Try to.
even in plain clothes, like yesterday. This is pretty much what I was wearing, going up and down between the primary school and the elementary school. We make a presence known, but we're not in uniform by and large.
What difficulty do we see in changing this police department to an 86-hour pay period? Is there anything difficult about it? Is it difficult to calculate? Is it going to throw off somebody's chi or whatever they call that?
It's not difficult to calculate. It's been abused in the past. There's been a lot of problems with the police department in this town being abused and going and using all of their budget plus some. But in the past, there has been, when you have the ability to work 86 hours, it was being used by everybody. There's been lots of discussions, you hadn't been involved in them in the past 7 years, but when we look at the police department, is weirder now at 13 officers plus a chief. Is that correct?
No, 13 officers, including the chief.
Including the chief. When we looked at this 3 or 4 years ago and looking at other towns in comparable size, Millshoe, I believe at that time was 8 or 9 officers. Friona was 6. you know, we're sitting here trying to say, okay, how come we are having so much problems in a town the same size? We've got 4 more officers or 5 more officers than these other towns. And, you know, so we think we're really well-staffed. Is it the schedule? Is it the number of people we have on shifts? I know they keep 2 on patrol at all times for safety reasons and that kind of thing. I haven't seen the breakdown of who's on shift at what time, but you know, there's been a lot of discussion with the police department in the past, and like Andrew said, it was being abused not many years ago, of using that whole amount of time of, hey guys, you can work 86 hours, it's in the budget, you know, that y'all feel free to use it and everybody gets to make more money. But the intent was that everybody works an 80-hour week, you know, and then if the overtime budget needs increased to account for that, because there are times, if you're working 5 12-hour days in a pay period, it's an 84-hour work week. And so, you know, that needs to be, you know, it depends on how you set up your system of how much overtime you need in that budget.
And a lot of it too, if I remember right, it was concern for fatigue for the officers.
12-hour shifts are great for a young guy. An old guy, it's bad news.
And I think that was one of the things that we addressed at the time was fatigue. It takes a toll on the body and it takes a toll on the mind. And we didn't want our officers out there having that stress and having that fatigue. And I think that played a big part in going to the 8-hour work weeks. You know, guys, the way I look at it, you're losing dispatchers now. You're going to lose officers if you pay them 86 hours regular time. Okay? You're taking that overtime that he could get at 81 and 82 and 83 hours. You're taking that away from him. So, you're going to pay him regular time when he can make a little bit more? What do you think he's going to do?
Police officers are a lot like mercenaries. They go where the money's at, I'll be honest with you.
Okay. So my personal opinion, if I can get 1 hour overtime and get paid 81 hours for 2 weeks, and I'm making double time, that's good for me. But you change it to an 86-hour work week, those 6 hours are paid regular time.
Mr. Ringo, regular time for a police officer is 86 hours. They don't get overtime until after 86 hours anyway. That's federal.
And they're working 12
They don't
hours.
get time and a half till after 86.
So it doesn't change anything for them. After 86 hours, that's when they get the overtime, not the 80.
Not the 80?
Right. So what we're talking about is, and then really changing, you're still working 12-hour shifts except for 1 day.
Yes, sir.
So really, that's not, I mean, they're still getting days off, are they not?
That 1 day, well, you're working 2 8-hour days in a pay period. That gets us to 80 hours, okay? I can see where Andrew's coming from on that. The thing about it is that when you consider that 80 to 86 as overtime, but you're getting paid straight time, that's what kills my line item for overtime.
And that's the problem that I'm trying to address here. Is
Yes, sir.
To prevent that from happening. Because our overtime obviously has got a problem. We had 7,500 budgeted for this year, and it's at 30,000 estimate. That's a huge difference.
And, you know, like when the $7,500 was put in for this fiscal year budget, that was with the understanding that that 13th officer was going to help alleviate that. Well, without benefit of a crystal ball, I didn't know I was going to have 3 officers out and replacing 3 officers. I mean, there's no such thing as a crystal ball in law enforcement. I mean, honestly, we didn't get past 7,500 until the 5th month of the fiscal budget, and that was mainly when Pedro was out and JC had just gone on workers' comp or light duty. Actually, she saved a lot of money. She saved the city a lot of money because we had to replace 2 dispatchers. She was dispatcher qualified. One of the reasons the comm center looked so good as far as their budget is the overtime and the salary that she worked didn't come out of that budget. It came out of mine. I mean, JC, you know, you know, I know there's no such thing as light duty for the city, but by putting her into that position where I lost 2 dispatchers, she really helped out as far as the overtime was concerned for dispatch. But it didn't do my budget very good, so anyway.
Chief, I have no disagreement. Your overtime budget needs raised. I have no disagreement with that because there are going to be times the situations arise like this that needs to be accounted for. But the goal was when these salaries were set was to work an 80-hour week, and some days that works, some days it doesn't. There does need to be an increase in your overtime budget because you're gonna go over that sometimes.
And you guys have done that with this proposed budget. But could I make a suggestion? What if we keep doing our 80-hour work pay period, but have that 6 hours, instead of it counting as overtime, why not use it as straight time? Would that be a problem?
Well, it would below your theoretical regular salaries if you put that money into your regular.
And that's why I'm discussing this, is because we're gonna have to make some adjustments to make sure.
Just make an adjustment on that. We'll keep doing our 80-hour, work schedule as far as that's concerned. We'll make adjustments on that. But instead of calling that 6-hour window as overtime, just call it as payroll.
So what I think the mayor is really talking about is the fact that in the past, they have used and abused those hours.
And I hear what he's saying.
So that's what he doesn't want to happen again.
But what I'm saying is if you keep it at that 80 hours for that pay period, but not consider 81, 82, all the way to 86 as overtime, just regular payroll, not call it overtime because you're not getting overtime.
We have to calculate that though in our budget to be able to have a true budget.
Yeah.
We have to put that in there.
But what I'm saying, it's already there. Like when you saw the officer's payroll slip the other day, you saw that.
It is in there, but it's not, it was put in as overtime.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's why Andrew has a problem with it, because it's not calculated. We take our salary that we look at and divide that by 2,080, that's what he gets per hour. So when he's calculating per hour, he gets to 80 and goes, okay, well, that's what we have in our budget for that salary. And then anything over 80 goes, well, it's not budgeted, so we have to put it in overtime. That's the problem right now. We need to make the calculation actually work at maybe 84 hours. Maybe we need to have a number. Is it going to be 84 hours they're going to work? We need to have that in there, so regular time is calculated at that. And 86 would be it, because that's the federal standard.
That's my point, is if 84 is what it works with the shifts, that 4 hours needs to be overtime, which that 4 hours on 11 officers that are on an hourly wage is about $18,000 a year of overtime. That number needs to be plugged into overtime, but it really messes things up when you put it into salaries, because you just automatically went and gave everybody a salary based on 86 hours, so it inflates their salary. You say they're not going to use it. I mean, it can say, well, I still make $20 an hour, but it is very hard to account for, and it leaves all of that flexibility within you to decide, am I going to rear them back to 86 or 80, or, I don't know. The overtime budget needs to be raised.
Yeah, it's to me, it doesn't make any difference either way you slice it. I mean, personally, I think me and Andrew feel like that if we kept it at 80 hours, that's a good number for the salary. But the overtime is a little bit unrealistic. I think that number probably ought to be raised probably another 8,000-10,000 maybe for it to be realistic, I mean, that would solve the issues. I mean, we pushed last year. I mean, I remember the chief's face when we passed the budget, said, you got to stay under 75 hours. And, it didn't look like it was going to happen, but, you tried and,
That 2-week period where I had all my officers and all that, and everything was right with the world and all that, we didn't have 1 hour of overtime.
Well, 7,500 was really
2 years ago, it was $40,000 in overtime. It'll make you throw up, and that's the problem. Again, you're running the department better than it's been ran in a long time. I have no qualms about that. But past experience has said that it can also not be ran good.
I'm just trying to get past the 313%. of increase in
Raised
overtime.
to account for that. I mean, guys, we give some direction, but I think the overtime budget needs to be raised, but for accounting purposes, it really needs to stay as overtime.
Well, y'all can make any changes to the budget at this time and still adopt it.
How would 84-hour work week or pay periods work versus what you got now, you would think?
I'd be able to get away from the 8-hour workday and schedule everybody across the board, the 12s with 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off. That would give everybody an every other weekend
Nobody
off.
works more than 3 days.
It's
in a row.
still what we've got now, but we have that 8-hour day on Thursdays.
To allow for that to happen, your overtime budget needs to increase $18,500. Or that's what that number needs to be, it's overtime.
The regular salaries would be increased if we were to actually calculate it correctly, right?
Pretty close. Calculate that 84, they get 2 hours overtime.
Before they hit overtime. Before they hit overtime, actually, yeah.
Well, whether you put it in salary or overtime, I mean, if it's a number that you've agreed to allow in the budget, you've already approved the expenditure of it.
Well, that's the issue we've had, though. We've approved budget overtime amounts, and that's the point of contention, it seems like, every month. How much overtime did you have? So if we put it in the regular salary and get that taken care of, then we don't have to worry about it anymore.
Well, it gives a goal to work toward, if you've got a number to try to cut down on overtime. But, I mean, like I say, it's either way you guys want, y'all just let us know and we'll.
It's currently in our personnel policy as the way it is, right? So if we're gonna change this, it's more than just the budget, it's a.
Yeah, we're gonna go back and change the 80-hour work week in our personnel policy. I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't think about that.
But even for FLSA, which should be a federal standard?
Well, our rules are, comply with federal standards, but the cities are allowed to do above and beyond on certain
We just couldn't
things.
go the other way. We couldn't say as a city, well, they have to work 90 hours in a pay
Yeah,
period.
can't say.
The law says 86.
Yeah,
But
we
it
can't
also
say.
provides for us to have less, like we're doing.
Yeah,
We're
we
not-
can't say you can work a 90-hour work week without overtime. I mean, a 90-hour pay period without overtime. We can't do that. Now, if we wanted to, we could say, we're gonna start paying overtime at 80 hours. I think fire department did that before, more than what fair labor standards say.
Within this item, to get some resolution to this, we can make a motion on it. If somebody wants to go to 86-hour on the regular pay, you can make that motion. That way we can give the management some directive of what to do. Or if we need to increase the overtime budget.
I would like to make the motion because the police chief has indicated that 84-hour work week or a pay period would be beneficial to the department to actually make it where overtime would probably be less. I say we make a motion to make the pay, the work week an 84-hour work week for the police department.
But once again, we added staff to the police department thinking that our overtime was gonna go down. And it would have gone down in a perfect world, correct?
Perfect
Right.
world.
We're not gonna have a perfect world.
Not here lately.
So what makes you think, once again, what makes us think that changing to an 84-hour work week is gonna cut your overtime? Yeah.
What
Once
the
again,
80-hour work
once
week,
again, we can't foresee the future, correct?
that's true. I think what we're tied up on is the nomenclature of that 6 hours.
It is money out of the city budget. It's just a line item. Is it going into the overtime budget? And does it make you sick when you look at overtime? Or is it coming out of salaries and does that make you sick? It's the nomenclature. It still costs the city the exact same amount of money. It's just that the way it's set up now, you get an overtime report that says, hey, what's going on here? Oh, it's just standard, or had a guy sick. The money's still spent. It's just how you account for it.
Right, well, we've never complained about regular salaries being over. We've never had a report that says, oh, regular salaries are up this month. No, it's always been overtime that we're complaining about.
Is there
So
a
that's
second?
what I'm saying, is we make the adjustments to make it where we don't have to really look at it. He will, the chief is responsible for it, obviously. So if it gets out of whack and it's, $30,000 over 12,000 that we have budgeted, yeah, that's kind of important. But it makes it where it just sounds like it'd work better in his department. 12-hour work days are better than having these weird things happen on Thursday where you don't even have shifts covered.
Maybe your report of overtime could address those too, of saying this was for regular shift work of overtime, and this was somebody was sick or whatever, and have a little more detail in your report.
The overtime budget, generally, when you see somebody on the overtime for the PD, it says cover shift. That's because somebody else has missed that shift.
There's a motion to go to an 84-hour pay period. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by Ken, seconded by Buddy. Any further discussion? All in favor of going to an 84-hour pay period for the police department, which will require a policy and procedures change? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. So who was aye? Raise your hand, please. 2, 4. All against, raise your hand. 3 against. We'll be on 80, and with that, we need to raise the overtime budget, I think. And so I make a motion to raise the overtime budget to $18,500. To give you some flexibility to go to a 12-hour shift. Is there a second for that?
I think.
Motion's been made by Eric, seconded by Michael, that we raise the overtime budget to $18,500. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, raise your right hand. 3, 4, 2 against. That's the motion carried. Anything else on the budget? Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Next question I have is, looking at the salaries, since I gave you a list of it, what is the percentage pay increase for the standard pay increase for employees this year? I didn't ever discuss that with you. Usually it's
So
just,
stepping grade is generally 2% for each step, and that comes at the anniversary. It's really not a cost of living, it's a merit increase. And an employee might not get that if they're not meeting the minimum requirements for the job. So it's a 2% merit increase. We did not do a cost of living increase. For the directors, it's a 2% increase.
well, there are a couple here that look like they're getting quite a bit of an increase in salary.
Yeah, there was a few during mid-year that we reevaluated their water department and some public works. We reevaluated their job duties and ended up increasing their salary a little bit from last year to this year.
Is that in the budget?
Yeah, we stayed in the budget on pretty much all of it. We lost some
Michael was,
employees.
Kenny West
And
was the city
matter of
manager
fact, we'll be
opposed.
below budget on some things.
So the mayor opposed.
But we do like to keep the water on.
Yeah. So a 15% increase is normal sometimes?
Which one are you talking about?
It's like the treasurer went up about 15%.
Where?
Treasurer went up about 15%.
Right, that's in the budget this year. That's, I proposed an increase, if you recall, when we started talking about the budget, the very first thing we talked about, 3 directors, I recommended a pretty sizable increase.
I don't recall saying that.
Treasurer, Public Works Director, and Water and Utilities Director, correct?
That was in the budget message.
I missed that. Okey-dokey. Last question, the airport grant agreement, I noticed it was on page 99 and 100 and 101. I don't know why it's in with the reports for the departments, but it says that the airport funds shall be established by resolution, order, or existing ordinance, and the treasurer is the sponsor or evidence of the prior creation of existing ordinance. And it says to keep those funds separately, but my question about that last time was that the airport has regular income and expenses. All it's talking about is making sure that the income is accounted for.
Yeah, it also says that all expenditures, all that revenue has to be expended
For the
separately.
grant. For the grant. Yeah, and you're supposed to.
No, it's for everything with the airport fund.
Such fund may be an account within another fund, but must be accounted for in such a manner that all revenues, expenses, retained earnings, and balances in the account are discernible from other types of monies identified in the whole fund as a whole. So,
Right. And I don't know how you would discern those revenues from year to year, because when the revenue comes into the general fund, it's absorbed. You know, it's not counted as a separate item, whereas a separate fund, it would be accounted for year to year.
okay.
And really, you know, I mean, my thinking behind creating that airport fund was, you know, we're gonna be spending a lot of money on some land purchase and stuff like that. I don't wanna get 3 years down the road with us having something that could potentially bring in revenue for the airport, and then us showing it as some kind of cash cow. I mean, we don't want that, because that's not what the TxDOT and General Aviation is there for. They don't want you to make a lot of money off a grant they give you. Matter of fact, they'll probably make you give the money back if you were sitting there with a cash cow airport.
So on page 123, we have a expenditure, fund transfer to airport fund for the proposed budget of 2019-2020. And there was a land purchase, capital outlay of $277,000, but there was no transfer from this year's budget. So,
That transfer was for a match for a ramp grant. You know, that airport fund is a separate fund, but it can't be just completely out there by itself. You can't just keep negative on that fund. So you have to actually put some money in there if you're gonna do something.
but there's no
And that's the
transfer,
grant.
there's no transfer out of our budget.
Yeah, there is.
Where,
It's right there at the end of the general fund.
where?
In the general fund summary on page, where's that at?
123,
And-
just transfer there.
Yeah, I see the 11,000, that's for the proposed next year, but there's no transfer out of this year's budget.
Until the general fund, in general, not just a particular line item, until the general fund itself over to the airport fund for that matching grant for the ramp grant.
We'll have to have the auditors come and look at that land purchase to see if they want to turn it into an asset or expense it. If they expense it, then you will see it transfer later on, but it's just going to take a little time since that was a land purchase.
That's a good question. I mean, that's something in there that I discussed. Good accounting practices are, you know, you need to show that.
And it shows, and it doesn't show the transfer in this year, so I mean, that's one thing we're missing, is there's no money into the airport fund, but there was a land purchase with money that appeared from.
That's what Andrew's saying, is you voted on it as council decided to spend that money, but until the auditors say, are they gonna expense this as a land purchase, or are they gonna expense it from the airport fund and transfer it to there, or is it a capital purchase, however, all the accounting stuff works on that, of how exactly they're going to handle that.
Yeah, if it's a land asset, it will be an asset transfer instead of an expense.
Okay. So we had no change to the budget, right? Other than there's a
Increase to
increase to overtime.
Yeah.
If there's no other discussion on the budget, we'll take a motion to approve the budget for this fiscal year with that amendment of increasing the budget. I'll make the motion. Make a motion, we approve the budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2019, and ending September 30th, 2020, making appropriation for each department, project account, debt, and declaring an emergency with an amended budget of $18,500 in the police overtime budget.
I will second that motion.
Motion's been made by Eric, seconded by Kenny. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
4 in favor of, 1 against. Next, we'll consider proposing tax rate for 2019-2020 fiscal year budget. The proposed tax rate will exceed the rollback rate or effective rate, whichever is lower. We'll take a recorded vote. Mitch?
One point out, most importantly, you cannot adopt a tax rate at this meeting. You have to vote to propose a tax rate, and then the chief appraiser has to run an ad in the paper showing that rate that you're proposing, and then you could adopt it at the next meeting. Just kind of short, we've got an extra $6 million in appraised value that came on, and which you've got 3 parts to this. You've got tax revenue, which is the calculation of appraisal, and then the rate. So your effective rate is a theoretical number that generates the same revenue as the year before. So if your valuation goes up, then your tax rate will have to go down to generate the same amount of revenue. A few years back, the state of Texas passed a bunch of laws on truth taxation, stuff like that, and they got real particular on how this works. And if you generate more of 1 penny worth of overall revenue of $1 million or so, then you have to do a series of hearings and notices and things like that. But it's up to you whether you want to change the tax rate or adopt the effective tax rate. The effective tax rate would generate the same amount of revenue as the year before, but it happens to be 1.09 cents less tax rate than last year's. So matter of fact, you're cutting the tax rate, but you're not cutting taxes. You're just accepting the same amount of revenue as the year before. Now, I know that's kind of complicated right at the first, but kind of in a nutshell, where you've got options. You can adopt last year's, propose last year's rate of 75.76, or you could raise the taxes if you wanted to up to a certain level, or you could adopt the effective tax rate, which is actually a cutting the rate of 1.09 cents. That's the number we've been working with since the beginning on the budget, and the actual M&O tax and debt service taxes. Debt service is 8.66 cents. So we've got about 68 cents for the operation and maintenance tax. But the overall tax rate is what we're really concerned with there. So, do you have any questions?
Make a motion, we adopt the effective tax rate.
That's
Propose. I make a motion, we propose the effective tax rate, which is a lower rate.
I think you should state that it's 0.7467 cents.
I make a motion that we propose an effective tax rate of 0.7467 per 100 valuation.
Second.
Motion's been made by Eric, seconded by Michael, that we propose the effective tax rate. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll discuss and consider approval of Chapter 4, Article 4.06, Section 4.06.010, rotation list towing procedures.
Mayor, this thing probably should have been visited last year at some time, but these contracts are expired. Right now, you could change the ordinance and we could redo the different contracts. I thought we'd have everybody on here and he might give us some pointers on what we need to be looking at as far as if we do need to make an ordinance change. Like I said, there's no, as I know, no big hurry on this thing. Buddy, do you have, I hate to tell me over the phone, 2 or 3 different things we might need to update our ordinance with.
Before Buddy said anything, is it legal for him to speak in relation to conflict of interest?
Yeah, I mean, if you're currently on the list,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and what?
I'm 1 of 2.
1 and 2, so it would be,
The city's not paying him, it's for, if somebody, they impound a car or something, he picks it up, so he's not directly benefiting from the city.
but you're still,
But he still is part of it.
That's a good question.
yeah, still could be a conflict. As far as,
So,
What's-
Be safe, buddy, you might want to step out.
Okay.
or just not
Or
participate.
not, we should.
That's fine, I mean, you can stay, just, you know.
Just don't vote no.
Yeah, and.
So, any changes from, Mitch?
Yeah, there's just some changes with liability insurance and some odds and ends that different kind of permits and stuff. What I recommend is that I go back and redo this complete ordinance and propose a new ordinance. And that the council maybe just approve the extension of these current agreements until that time.
So you're looking at redoing this ordinance?
Yeah, I think we probably should go back and just redo the whole thing, and I can get some input outside the meeting on current, like the liability insurance requirements and stuff on the ordinance, or we're just a little bit outdated, and
Ryan said Underwood just did one of these for another city, so. So how long do you need to extend it, 60 days?
no, just to next month.
So I guess he's wanting to redo the ordinance, so we'll need an extension of this current ordinance for another 30 to 30 days at a minimum.
I thought maybe extend the contracts. The towing contracts.
And not do anything with the ordinance, or do with that.
Just
When did the
extend
contract
it.
expire?
Last year.
October of last year.
Oh, well, then what's the hurry?
All right. So no action, is that everybody's consensus? We'll look at this again in September. Is that the consensus?
Yeah, we'll bring you updated ordinance, yeah.
Next, we'll consider and appoint Parks Advisory Committee members to fill a vacancy and reappoint the rest of the 3-year term. That is on page 90. So there's a current members, and Albert Mirabal has moved and accepted a job for doing a job in Roswell, so we need to replace him and reappoint the rest of them. So an appointment to replace Albert.
Mayor, I'd like to nominate Mr. Eric Sines, who's well known in the community. I think he would be bring some good diversification to the committee.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Kenny, seconded by Ben to appoint Eric Sines. Kenny, do you want to also reappoint the rest of them for the 3-year term?
Yes,
Ben, do you second?
I'll second those.
A motion's been made and seconded to appoint Eric Sines in place of Albert Mirabal and reappoint the remaining board members for another 3-year term. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve an ordinance 2019-0827 franchise agreement between the city of Littlefield and Excel Energy.
Yeah, Mayor, this is a franchise. We've been working back and forth a couple of passes with Excel, and we just kind of used the same deal that everybody else got with the franchise agreement, 5%. And there's, it's a 10-year agreement. I don't know, Brian, do you have any comments on that?
No, I mean, we took what we had for the last 10 years, we've kind of just moving forward with it. We added a change to the, in the version we proposed to them, kind of broadened the definition of gross receipts to try to, if they ever change what they do, we would still get money from that. But it's pretty standard throughout their service area, this franchise agreement. That's pretty much what they give. So, and it's what we've been operating under. It's been time to renew it.
Can we get a motion to approve this franchise agreement?
I make a motion, we approve this franchise agreement with Southwestern Public Service. That's it.
Second.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Kenny, that we approve the franchise agreement with Southwestern Public Services. Any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, the motion carries. Next, we will consider and approve an ordinance 2019-0827 franchise agreement between the city of Littlefield and Lamb County Electric Co-op.
On this agreement, we had after the agenda was printed up, we had an expansion, kind of a more broader definition of a paragraph in there. It's on chapter 3, last paragraph, page 230 of your folder, but really doesn't say a lot different. Just some legal terminology talking about the way calculations are made.
So we need to approve this franchise agreement with this addition.
Yeah, Brian, does that sound?
Yep.
Make a motion, we approve this franchise agreement with Lamb County Electric with this following addition.
Second.
Motion's been made by Eric, seconded by Michael. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll consider and approve a resolution by the city of Littlefield suspending the effective date of Southwestern Public Service Company's proposed increase in rates as allowed by statute, approving temporary rates on so on and so forth. Mitch?
A lot of so on and so forth in this one. The action is an acronym for Excel municipalities.
Alliance of Excel.
Yeah. And there's a group of city managers. I'm on that group, and we kind of lead the area for negotiating these different rates and how, the rate cases come about. And a lot of times there's negotiations, but one of the first things you do when you get a new rate case is suspend it. And this is part of a tactic to keep these, and some of our new members may not know, we have some regulatory authority over rates for gas and electric. So this is the city's exercising its authority to keep rates as low as possible. and keep the power company and the gas company in check. Been that way for a long time, and we have to work in conjunction with the Public Utilities Commission. So it's, there's a lot to it. If you want to read about it, there's a handout there that goes along with it behind it. But I would recommend that we adopt this suspending resolution.
You have a motion to adopt that suspending resolution.
I'll make that motion to adopt the resolution.
Motion's been made by Ben, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion's been seconded by Buddy, is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carried. Next, we'll consider and approve a resolution of the City Council of Littlefield, Texas, approving a negotiated settlement between the Executive Committee of Atmos West Texas Cities and Atmos Energy Commission.
Kind of along the same line as the power company, we have that regulated regulatory authority. I used to serve on this Atmos West Texas committee, but it's a negotiated thing, and they've got a RRM. It's another acronym for rate review mechanism, and it allows so we have an attorney that is very up to date on gas regulations and what can be charged and such. So they go in and wrestle around with them over the rate, and we end up with a settlement, usually quite a bit less than, I think this is quite a bit less. I think about half, down from 11 million down to 4.7 million, I think is what the negotiated number was. So this reinstates the RRM and approves this negotiated rate through the RRM.
We get a motion to approve the negotiated settlement with Atmos Energy.
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Michael, seconded by Ben, that we approve the negotiated settlement with Atmos Energy. Is there any further discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. We are through this agenda tonight. Thank you for all the members of the public and the county. We are adjourned.